The last Zephyrian ship died in complete silence. The hunter-killer drone had used a weapon that drained all energy from the target, leaving behind a cold, dark hulk drifting through space. Admiral HFY and his crew were flash-frozen in seconds, preserved forever as a monument to the price of attacking humanity. Commander Morrison watched the final explosion fade from his view screen. The battle was over. 50 alien warships had been destroyed by a single human vessel in less than 2 hours. It was a complete victory, but Morrison felt no satisfaction. This had never been a fair fight. All enemy vessels destroyed, reported Captain Lisa Hayes from her tactical station. No survivors detected. Morrison nodded and opened a communication channel to Earth Command. The signal would take several hours to reach home, but his superiors needed to know about first contact immediately. Earth Command, this is USS Liberty. First contact with alien species has been completed. The species was hostile and has been neutralized according to defensive protocols, awaiting further orders. Dr. Helen Brooks was already preparing her scientific report from her station. As the ship's xenobiologist, she was responsible for analyzing everything they had learned about alien technology and tactics during the battle. "Commander, I have some interesting findings about the Zephyrian military capabilities," she said. "Their technology is actually quite advanced, but their tactical thinking is centuries behind our own." This was exactly what Earth's military leaders had hoped to learn. Human expansion into the galaxy depended on understanding the strengths and weaknesses of potential enemies. Today's battle had provided valuable intelligence about galactic military standards. Lieutenant Carol White was monitoring communication channels across local space. The battle had been visible from several nearby star systems, and other alien species were already talking about what they had witnessed. "Sir, I'm picking up communications from at least 6 different species. They're all discussing the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet. Word is spreading fast about what happened here." Morrison smiled grimly. "Good, let them talk." Fear was humanity's most effective weapon in preparing for future expansion. If other species were afraid of human military capabilities, they might choose cooperation over conflict. Captain Billy Rogers was analyzing the tactical data from the battle. His job was to identify ways to improve human combat effectiveness for future encounters. "Commander, the aliens never adapted to our drone swarm tactics. Even after losing multiple ships, they kept trying to use formation-based combat. Their military thinking appears to be completely rigid. This was typical of older galactic civilizations. They had been dominant for so long that they stopped innovating. They relied on tried and tested methods that had worked for thousands of years. Humans had no such luxury. They were newcomers who had to be better than everyone else to survive." Dr. Brooks finished her preliminary analysis and turned to address the bridge crew. Her expression was serious as she shared her findings. "Based on my analysis of their technology and tactics, I believe most galactic species will be similarly vulnerable to human military doctrine. They've grown comfortable during long periods of peace. They've forgotten how to fight truly dangerous enemies." Lieutenant Amy Carter was still monitoring her weapon systems. All of the experimental weapons had performed perfectly during the battle. Earth scientists would be pleased with the test results. "All weapon systems performed within acceptable parameters," she reported. "The new technologies are ready for large-scale deployment." Morrison was pleased, but not surprised. Human military engineering was the product of centuries of continuous warfare. Every weapon system was tested thoroughly before being approved for combat use. Unlike the aliens, humans left nothing to chance when it came to military technology. Communication system chimed with an incoming message. Lieutenant White checked the signal source and looked puzzled. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's marked Priority 1 with command authorization codes." Morrison frowned. The signal couldn't be from Earth Command. Light-speed communication meant any message from home would take hours to arrive. This had to be from somewhere much closer. "Put it through," he ordered. The main screen activated to show the face of Admiral Sarah Grant, commander of Earth's deep space operations. She was speaking from what appeared to be the bridge of another starship. "Commander Morrison, this is Admiral Grant aboard the USS Defender. Congratulations on completing your mission successfully." Morrison's eyes widened in surprise. The Defender was supposed to be conducting operations in a completely different sector of space. What was it doing here? "Admiral, I wasn't expecting support vessels in this area." Grant smiled. "The Liberty wasn't operating alone, Commander. You've been part of a much larger operation from the beginning." The tactical display updated to show dozens of new contacts throughout the local star cluster. Human ships were appearing on sensors everywhere, dropping their stealth systems and revealing their true positions. Dr. Brooks stared at the display in amazement. "There are human vessels in every major star system within 50 light years." "How long have they been there?" "The advance fleet has been in position for 6 months," Admiral Grant explained. "Your first contact mission was designed to test alien military capabilities, while our other ships gathered intelligence on galactic infrastructure and defenses." Morrison finally understood the true scope of Earth's plans. The Liberty hadn't been exploring. It had been bait, designed to draw out hostile aliens and test their military responses. Meanwhile, dozens of other human ships had been secretly mapping the galaxy's defenses. "Sir," Captain Rogers said quietly, "if we have ships positioned throughout the galaxy, that means ... "Yes," Admiral Grant confirmed. "Operation Galactic Dawn is proceeding to Phase 2. Earth's expansion into inhabited space begins now." Lieutenant White was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. Alien species everywhere were detecting human ships in their territories. The careful disguise was over. Humanity was revealing its true presence to the galaxy. "Admiral, I'm detecting panic on alien communication networks. They're realizing that human ships are everywhere." This had been Earth's strategy from the beginning. While the galaxy's attention was focused on the Liberty's first contact mission, hundreds of other human vessels had been taking positions throughout inhabited space. When the time came to reveal humanity's presence, they would already control all the strategic positions. Dr. Brooks was analyzing the scope of the operation from her science station. "This is incredible. We've essentially surrounded every major alien civilization simultaneously. They can't coordinate a defense because we're already inside their territories." Admiral Grant's expression was serious as she addressed the Liberty's crew. The Zephyrian Empire was just the first test. Now we know that galactic military forces can't match human capabilities. It's time to offer other species a choice. Join the new galactic order under human leadership, or face the same fate as the Zephyrians. Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They had thought they were conducting a simple first contact mission. Instead, they had been the opening move in humanity's conquest of the galaxy. "Admiral, what are our new orders?" he asked. "Proceed to the Altarian Commonwealth. They're the largest military power in this sector. Your job is to convince them to surrender peacefully. If they refuse..." Grant's expression hardened. "Well, you've already demonstrated what happens to species that choose to fight humanity." The USS Liberty changed course toward its next target. Behind it, the wreckage of the Zephyrian fleet drifted through space as a warning to any species that might consider resistance. "Commander." Morrison settled back in his command chair and smiled. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had known for centuries. In war, there were only victors and victims, and humanity had no intention of being victims ever again. The USS Liberty moved through space like a hunting predator. Its engines, no longer disguised as primitive fusion drives, revealed their true nature as advanced antimatter propulsion systems. The ship accelerated far beyond what any Zephyrian vessel could achieve, easily catching up to the fleeing alien fleet. Admiral Kethver watched in growing terror as the human ship closed the distance. His fastest scouts were being overtaken by a vessel that had appeared primitive just hours earlier. Everything about these humans was a lie designed to lure enemies into a false sense of security. How fast is that thing moving? He demanded from the emergency bridge of a surviving escort ship. Sir, their acceleration rate is impossible. They're gaining on our fastest vessels with ease, reported the tactical officer. Commander Morrison studied the fleeing alien ships from his command chair. Engineering Chief Kevin Price had just finished activating the Liberty's experimental weapon systems. These were technologies that Earth's military had developed, but never tested in actual combat. Kevin, are the new systems ready? Morrison asked. Price was a large man with calloused hands who had spent 20 years working with dangerous technologies. He looked nervous as he checked his readings. Yes, sir, but I have to warn you. These weapons violate several galactic treaties. If word gets out that we're using them, it could cause problems with other species. Morrison's expression didn't change. The aliens fired first. We're defending ourselves using any means necessary. That's human military doctrine. The first experimental weapon was something Earth scientists called a cascade destabilizer. Instead of simply destroying enemy ships, it caused their own systems to turn against them. The weapon sent out invisible energy pulses that interfered with alien computer systems and made them malfunction in catastrophic ways. Lieutenant Carol White activated the system from her station. She was known for her gentle personality, but today her face was cold and focused. War changed people, even the kindest ones. Cascade destabilizer is active, she reported, targeting the nearest enemy vessel. The weapon fired, sending out a pulse of energy that was invisible to most sensors. When it struck the Zephyrian ship, nothing seemed to happen at first. Then the alien vessel's lights began flickering. Its engines started firing randomly, pushing the ship in different directions. Finally, its own weapons began firing at nearby friendly vessels. What's happening to the Starfire? Kethver asked as he watched one of his ships spinning out of control. Sir, their computer systems appear to be malfunctioning. They're reporting total system failures throughout the ship. Dr. Helen Brooks was monitoring the weapon's effects from her science station. She felt sick watching the alien crew struggle with their dying ship, but she also understood the tactical value of what they were doing. The cascade effect is working perfectly, she reported. Their ship's systems are turning against each other. It's like a virus that spreads through their technology. This was the true horror of human warfare. They didn't just build weapons to destroy their enemies. They built weapons to make enemies destroy themselves. The psychological effect was devastating to any species that witnessed it. The Starfire finally exploded as its own weapons overloaded and detonated internally. The crew never had a chance to escape. They died because their own technology had been turned into a weapon against them. Lieutenant Amy Carter was preparing the next experimental weapon. This one was called a quantum disruptor, and it was designed to make enemy ships simply cease to exist on a molecular level. Commander, the quantum disruptor is charged and ready, she announced. Morrison nodded grimly. Fire at will. The second weapon created a field of energy that disrupted the atomic bonds holding matter together. When it struck a Zephyrian cruiser, the ship didn't explode or break apart. It simply dissolved into a cloud of component atoms. That scattered harmlessly into space. Admiral Kethver watched his ship and crew vanish as if they had never existed. The horror of it made him physically sick. These humans weren't just advanced. They were monsters who had turned science itself into an instrument of terror. "Admiral," his communication officer said with a shaking voice, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." Dr. Brooks appeared on the screen, her expression calm and educational. She looked like a teacher about to give a lecture to students. "Admiral Kethfer, I want to explain what you're seeing. These weapons represent human scientific achievement over the past century. We don't just study physics to understand the universe. We study it to find new ways to end conflicts quickly and decisively." The alien admiral could barely speak. "You're using science to commit genocide?" Brooks shook her head. "No, Admiral. We're using science to defend ourselves against aggressors. Every weapon we've deployed today exists because humans spent thousands of years fighting each other. We learned to be very, very good at war." Captain Billy Rogers was tracking the remaining enemy vessels from his tactical station. The alien fleet was scattering in all directions, but the Liberty's advanced sensors could track them all. "Sir, we have 17 enemy ships remaining. They're spreading out to make targeting more difficult." Morrison considered this development. The aliens were finally learning to adapt, but it was too late. Human military doctrine didn't allow enemies to escape once they had demonstrated hostile intent. "Deploy the hunter-killer drones," he ordered. These were different from the combat drones used earlier. Hunter-killers were larger, faster, and designed for one purpose: pursuing fleeing enemies across vast distances. Each one had its own advanced AI and enough fuel to chase targets for weeks if necessary. Captain Lisa Hayes watched the new drones launch from the Liberty's hidden bays. There were only 12 of them, but each one was as dangerous as a small warship. "Hunter-killers are away," she reported. "They're locking on to individual enemy vessels." The drones spread out across space, each one selecting a different target. They accelerated beyond what any biological pilot could survive, reaching speeds that made them nearly impossible to evade. Admiral Kethvar watched the new threat approaching his scattered fleet. These humans seemed to have an endless supply of advanced weapons and tactics. Every time his forces adapted to one threat, they deployed something even worse. "How many different weapon systems do they have?" he asked desperately. Dr. Brooks heard his question through the open communication channel. "Admiral, humans have been preparing for space warfare for over a century. We've developed thousands of different weapons and tactics. What you've seen today is just a small sample. The first hunter-killer reached its target and deployed its weapon payload. Instead of an explosion, the alien ship simply stopped existing in normal space-time. It was transported to a pocket dimension where it would remain trapped forever. That's our dimensional displacement system," Brooks explained helpfully. "We find it more efficient than destruction. The crew remains alive, but they can never threaten anyone again." Kethfer realized with growing horror that these humans had been planning for galactic conquest all along. They hadn't stumbled into space warfare. They had spent decades preparing for it, with scientific precision and ruthless efficiency. More of his ships vanished as the hunter-killers reached their targets. Each drone used a different weapon system, as if the humans were testing their entire arsenal on his fleet. "Please," Kethfer finally transmitted. "We surrender. Call off your weapons." Commander Morrison's voice came back cold and final. "Admiral, human military doctrine is very clear on this point. Enemies who attack us don't get to surrender. They get eliminated." The last thing Admiral Kethfer saw was a hunter-killer drone approaching his ship, its weapons charging for one final demonstration of human scientific achievement. The Zephyrian fleet moved into attack formation. 50 ships arranged themselves in perfect lines, their energy weapons charging in unison. It was a beautiful display of military precision that had terrified countless species across the galaxy. Admiral Kethfor watched with satisfaction as his vessels took their positions. "All ships report ready for battle, sir," announced his communication officer. "Begin the assault," Kethvar commanded. "Show these humans the power of the Zephyrian." Empire. 50 plasma beams lanced through space toward the lone human vessel. The coordinated attack should have vaporized any ship in the galaxy. Instead, the USS Liberty did something that confused every alien tactical officer watching. It disappeared. Not literally, but it activated a cloaking system that made it nearly invisible to their sensors. Where there had been one clear target, now there were dozens of false readings scattered across space. The plasma beams struck empty space or hit decoy projections that vanished on impact. "What happened?" Kethva demanded. "Where did they go?" Before anyone could answer, the space around the Zephyrian fleet filled with small objects. Hundreds of them, each no bigger than a fighter craft, but moving with impossible speed and agility. They swarmed around the alien ships like angry insects. Commander. Morrison was watching the battle from the Liberty's bridge with calm satisfaction. Captain Billy Rogers, his tactical coordinator, was directing the engagement from his station. Rogers was a thin man with sharp eyes who had spent years studying alien military tactics. "Drone deployment successful, sir," Rogers reported. "All units are active and engaging enemy targets." The combat drones were one of humanity's greatest military innovations. Each one was controlled by an advanced artificial intelligence that could think and react faster than any biological creature. They were too small for the alien weapons to target effectively, but each drone carried enough firepower to damage much larger ships. Lieutenant Amy Carter was coordinating the drone attacks from her weapons station. She could see the confusion on the alien ships as they tried to track hundreds of small, fast-moving targets. "The aliens are having trouble with their targeting systems," she reported. "Their weapons are designed for ship-to-ship combat, not swarm tactics." This was exactly what human military planners had expected. Most galactic species fought wars the same way they had for thousands of years. Large ships in formation, trading fire until one side was destroyed or retreated. They had never encountered an enemy that used small, independent units working together. Dr. Helen Brooks was analyzing the alien response patterns from her science station. "Commander, their fleet doctrine appears to be completely rigid. They're trying to maintain formation, even though it makes them easier targets for our drones." Morrison nodded. This was typical of older military cultures. They valued order and discipline over adaptability. Human military doctrine was the opposite. It embraced chaos and used it as a weapon. The first Zephyrian ship died 3 minutes into the battle. A group of drones had focused their fire on its engine section, overwhelming its shields through concentrated attacks. The ship's fusion reactor went critical, and the vessel exploded in a bright flash. "Impossible," whispered Kethvar's tactical officer. "How can such small craft penetrate our defenses?" The answer was simple but terrifying. Human drones didn't fight like ships. They fought like predators. They circled their prey, looking for weakness, then attacked in coordinated strikes that no single ship could defend against. Captain Lisa Hayes was monitoring the overall battle from her position. She could see the alien formation beginning to break apart as individual ships tried to defend themselves against the drone swarms. "They're losing cohesion," she reported. "Some ships are breaking formation to pursue individual drone groups." This was exactly what Morrison had hoped for. Once the aliens abandoned their formation, they became isolated targets. Human military doctrine called this divide and conquer. Break the enemy's organization, then destroy them piece by piece. A second Zephyrian ship exploded, then a third. The alien weapons were too slow and clumsy to track the fast-moving human drones. When they did manage to hit one, 2 more would take its place. The humans seemed to have an endless supply of the small craft. "Admiral," the Zephyrian science officer said with growing panic, "we're detecting a massive weapons platform hidden behind their cloaking field. It's launching more drones every few seconds. Cathvar finally understood what he was facing. The human ship wasn't just a warship. It was a mobile factory that could produce an army of small fighters during battle. No wonder they weren't worried about being outnumbered. But the worst was yet to come. Lieutenant Carol White at the communications station was receiving new orders. From Earth Command, the battle had been monitored from the home system, and the military leadership had decided to test their newest weapons. "Commander," White said quietly, "we're authorized to deploy the kinetic bombardment system." Morrison's expression grew serious. The kinetic bombardment system was humanity's answer to heavily armored targets. Instead of using explosive warheads, it simply accelerated dense metal projectiles to incredible speeds. The kinetic energy alone was enough to punch through any known armor. "Target the largest enemy vessel," Morrison ordered. "Full power shot." The USS Liberty's main railgun rotated to face Admiral Cathvar's flagship. The weapon charged for several seconds, building up enormous electromagnetic force. When it fired, the projectile was moving at nearly 30% of light speed. The tungsten rod struck the Crimson Talon's forward section and kept going. It passed completely through the ship from bow to stern, creating a perfectly round hole that went through every deck and compartment. The alien vessel's structure couldn't handle the damage, and it began breaking apart. Admiral Cathvar found himself floating in the wreckage of his bridge, his ship dying around him. Emergency systems were failing throughout the vessel. He could hear his crew screaming over the communication system as they realized their flagship was doomed. "This is impossible," he gasped into his communicator. "No weapon should be able to penetrate our armor like that." Dr. Brooks heard his comment and decided to educate him one final time. "Admiral, your armor is designed to stop energy weapons and explosives. It was never meant to handle a solid projectile moving at relativistic speeds. Humans learned to use physics as a weapon. The concept was alien to Cathvar's understanding of warfare. His people used sophisticated energy weapons that required complex technology to operate. These humans were using simple physics principles to achieve devastating results. More Zephyrian ships were dying every minute. The human drones continued their relentless attacks while the Liberty picked off larger targets with its kinetic weapons. What had started as a confident assault by a superior force was becoming a one-sided massacre. "All ships retreat," Cathvar finally ordered over the fleet communication system. "Fall back to minimum safe distance." But even as he gave the order, he knew it might already be too late. The human ship was moving to intercept his fleeing vessels, and their weapons had range and accuracy beyond anything in his fleet. "Commander," Morrison watched the alien retreat with cold satisfaction. The battle was going exactly as human military doctrine predicted. Superior technology combined with superior tactics was overwhelming an enemy that relied on outdated methods. "Should we pursue, sir?" asked Captain Rogers. Morrison considered the question carefully. His orders from Earth Command were clear. Any alien force that attacked human vessels was to be completely destroyed. No exceptions. "Yes," he said finally. "Begin pursuit operations. No enemy ships are to escape the system." Admiral Cathvar stared at his tactical display in confusion. The plasma beam that should have disabled the human ship had simply disappeared. His weapons officer looked equally puzzled as he checked his instruments twice. "Sir, our sensors confirm a direct hit on their hull, but there's no damage. No energy discharge. The beam just vanished." Cathvar's mouth opened slightly. In 3,000 years of galactic warfare, he had never seen anything like this. Even the most advanced species in the galaxy took some damage from Zephyrian plasma weapons. These humans had absorbed a direct hit as if it was nothing. "Run a deeper scan," he ordered. I want to know what kind of shielding they're using. On the Liberty, Commander Morrison watched the alien confusion with satisfaction. The ship's adaptive armor had worked exactly as designed. The incoming plasma energy was captured by millions of microscopic collectors built into the hull and then redistributed harmlessly throughout the ship's structure. Lieutenant Carter, bring all weapon systems online, Morrison said calmly. Full combat readiness. Amy Carter's fingers moved across her control panel. Throughout the ship, hidden weapon systems began powering up. What the aliens had scanned as simple railguns were actually electromagnetic accelerators capable of incredible destructive force. The missile launchers they detected were just the visible portion of a much larger weapons array. Dr. Helen Brooks was monitoring the alien scanning attempts from her science station. She could see their confusion growing as new energy signatures appeared throughout the Liberty. Commander, they're detecting massive power increases. Their scans are picking up weapon systems they didn't see before. Morrison nodded. It was time to educate these aliens about human military engineering. He opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian ship. Admiral Kethfer, this is Commander Morrison. I'm going to explain something to you. What your scans detected was the outer shell of our ship. Human vessels are built with multiple layers of technology. We don't like to show our true capabilities until we have to. On the alien bridge, the science officer was frantically updating his readings. New weapon signatures were appearing everywhere on the human ship. Energy levels that didn't match anything in their database. Power sources that seemed impossible based on the ship's size. Admiral, the science officer said with growing alarm, these new readings don't make sense. The ship's true power output is 50 times higher than our initial scans showed. And these weapon signatures? Some of them are completely unknown to our technology. Kethfer felt a cold sensation in his stomach. He had made a terrible mistake. These humans weren't primitive at all. They had deliberately hidden their true capabilities. Dr. Brooks continued her explanation over the open channel. Her voice was calm and educational, like a teacher explaining a simple concept to students. You see, Admiral, humans learned long ago that it's better to let enemies underestimate you. What you thought was a fusion reactor is actually a matter-antimatter containment system. We just built it to look like older technology. Your scans couldn't penetrate the masking layers we use. The Zephyrian tactical officer was now openly afraid. He had served in dozens of battles across the galaxy, but he had never seen anything like this. Weapons that could hide from their most advanced sensors. Power sources that violated everything they knew about ship construction. Sir, he said quietly, if their defensive systems are this advanced, their weapons might be equally dangerous. Morrison decided it was time for a demonstration. He turned to Lieutenant Carol White at the communications station. Carol, transmit our weapon specifications to their ship. Let them see what they're really facing. The data transmission hit the Zephyrian computers like a physical blow. Their translation systems struggled to process the technical information, but the basic facts were clear. The human railguns could accelerate projectiles to 20% of light speed. Their missiles carried warheads that could destroy entire cities, and these were just their basic weapons. This is impossible, whispered the Zephyrian science officer. No ship this size could contain such powerful systems. Dr. Brooks heard his comment through the open channel and smiled. You're thinking like most galactic species. You build big ships to carry big weapons. Humans learn to build small ships that hit much harder than they should. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We got very good at making deadly things in small packages. Admiral Kethfer was beginning to understand the scope of his error. These weren't just advanced aliens. They were a warrior species that had perfected the art of deception and destruction. His empire had rules about warfare, codes of honor that limited how battles were fought. These humans clearly followed no such rules. "Admiral," Morrison said, his voice still calm, with an edge of steel, "you fired on my ship without provocation. In human military doctrine, that makes you an enemy combatant. I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw your forces and leave this system. If you refuse, I will demonstrate why humans don't lose battles." Captain Lisa Hayes was watching the alien ship's energy patterns from her tactical station. She could see their weapons charging for another attack, but she could also see their confusion and growing fear. "Commander," she said quietly, "they're not backing down. Their weapon systems are still active." Morrison sighed. He had hoped the aliens would be smart enough to retreat once they understood what they were facing. Apparently, they needed a more convincing demonstration. "Carter," he said, "target their forward weapon array. Minimum force. I want to disable their guns without destroying their ship." Amy Carter's targeting system locked onto the alien vessel. The Liberty's main railgun rotated slightly, aiming at the Zephyrian ship's primary plasma cannon. The projectile that fired was no bigger than a marble, but it was moving at incredible speed. The small metal sphere punched through the alien ship's energy shields like they weren't there. It struck the plasma cannon, and the entire weapon system exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The explosion was contained within the weapon housing, causing no other damage to the ship. On the Zephyrian bridge, alarms were screaming. The weapon that had taken their engineers decades to perfect was destroyed in a single shot. And the human ship had done it with such precision that nothing else was damaged. "Admiral," the tactical officer said with obvious fear in his voice, "they took out our main gun with one shot. And sir, our shields didn't even slow down their projectile." Kethver stared at the damage display. The human weapon had passed through their most advanced defensive systems as if they didn't exist. The projectile had been so small and fast that their sensors barely detected it before impact. Morrison's voice came over the communication channel again. "That was a warning shot, Admiral. Your shields can't stop our weapons. Your armor can't protect you. And that was just one gun on one human ship. I suggest you consider retreat while you still can." The alien admiral looked around his bridge, at the faces of his crew. These were experienced warriors who had fought across the galaxy. Now they looked like frightened children who had just realized they were playing with something far more dangerous than they understood. But Kethvar was a proud leader of a proud empire. He couldn't simply retreat from a single enemy ship, no matter how advanced it might be. His reputation and the honor of his people were at stake. "All ships," he commanded over the fleet communication system, "prepare for full assault. These humans may be advanced, but we still outnumber them 50 to 1. On the Liberty, Morrison heard the alien fleet preparing for battle. He turned to his crew with a sad expression. "Well," he said quietly, "I tried to warn them." The stars looked different through alien eyes. Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon, watching the endless black space around him. His empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Every species they met either joined them willingly or was forced to submit. Today would be no different. "Admiral, we have detected an unknown vessel," reported his tactical officer. The bridge crew turned their attention to the main screen. A strange ship appeared in the distance, moving slowly through space. Kethver studied the vessel with interest. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The ship looked crude and basic, made of simple metal plates welded together. Its design was blocky and rough, nothing like the smooth, elegant curves of Zephyrian ships. Whoever built this thing clearly had no sense of proper engineering. "Can you identify the species?" Kethver asked. "No, sir. This ship design is not in our database. But our sensors show it uses very primitive technology. Basic fusion reactors, simple metal construction, and what appears to be kinetic weapons. Kethfer almost laughed. Kinetic weapons in this age of energy shields and plasma cannons. These aliens were clearly far behind the rest of the galaxy in terms of technology. They probably still thought throwing rocks at high speed wasn't effective. Combat strategy. Meanwhile, aboard the human vessel USS Liberty, Commander Jake Morrison was having his morning coffee when the alien ship appeared on their sensors. He was a tall man with graying hair and calm blue eyes. 20 years of military service had taught him to stay relaxed even when facing the unknown. "Sir, we have contact with an alien vessel," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter from the weapons station. She was young but experienced, having served on 3 different ships before joining the Liberty. "Put it on screen," Morrison said, setting down his coffee cup. The alien ship appeared on the main display. It was beautiful in its own way, with smooth purple hull and glowing energy cores visible through transparent sections. The design spoke of an advanced civilization that had mastered space travel long ago. "They're trying to communicate," said Lieutenant Carol White from the communications station. She had short red hair and was known for her ability to learn alien languages quickly. "Put them through." The screen changed to show an alien face. The creature had pale blue skin, large yellow eyes, and what looked like small scales instead of hair. When it spoke, the translation system converted its words into English. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Kethfer of the Zephyrian Empire. You have entered our territory without permission. State your purpose and prepare for inspection." Morrison leaned back in his captain's chair. He had been expecting this moment for months. Earth's first contact with an alien empire. The diplomatic team had prepared him for several possible scenarios, but this one was clearly hostile from the start. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel USS Liberty. We are exploring this region of space. We claim no territory. Hear and seek peaceful contact with your people." The alien admiral's expression changed. His large eyes narrowed, and his mouth twisted into what might have been a smile or a threat display. "Earth, we have no record of your species. You will submit to inspection and surrender any territorial claims in this sector. Your primitive vessel poses no threat to our forces, so do not attempt resistance." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. The alien's tone was that of someone talking to a child or a pet. He had dealt with bullies before, both in school and in the military. The approach was always the same: establish dominance through superior force. "I'm afraid we cannot agree to those terms," Morrison replied calmly. "The Liberty is on a peaceful mission, but we will defend ourselves if attacked." Dr. Helen Brooks, the ship's science officer, leaned over to whisper in Morrison's ear. She was a small woman with dark hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. "Commander, they're scanning us." Deep-level scans of our hull, power systems, and weapons. Morrison nodded slightly. This was expected. Let them look. Earth's engineers had prepared for this possibility. On the Zephyrian ship, the science officer was reporting his findings to Admiral Kethfer. "Sir, I have completed the scan of their vessel. The ship is constructed from basic metal alloys, approximately 70% iron with various other materials. Power source appears to be fusion reactors, though they are shielded in an unusual way. Weapon systems include what appear to be electromagnetic railguns and primitive missile launchers." Kethfer nodded. Everything confirmed his initial assessment. These humans were a young species that had barely learned to travel between stars. Their weapons were laughably outdated, and their ship construction methods were thousands of years behind current galactic standards. What about their defensive systems? He asked. "Basic energy shields, sir. Nothing that could withstand even our lightest plasma weapons. The entire vessel could be disabled with a single warning shot. This was perfect." Kethvar could demonstrate the power of the Zephyrian Empire without actually destroying the primitive aliens. A show of force would convince them to submit, and then they could be properly educated about their place in the galaxy. Back on the Liberty, Captain Lisa Hayes was monitoring the alien scans from her position at the tactical station. She was Morrison's second in command and had been with him for 5 years. Her calm demeanor hid a sharp tactical mind that had gotten them out of trouble more than once. "They're getting surface readings only," she reported quietly. "The masking systems are working perfectly." Morrison smiled slightly. The aliens were seeing exactly what Earth's engineers wanted them to see: a primitive ship with basic weapons and defenses. The real systems were hidden beneath layers of deceptive hull plating and false energy signatures. Lieutenant Amy Carter was watching her weapon systems display. To any external scanner, the Liberty appeared to have simple railguns and missile launchers. In reality, those same weapons could accelerate projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed and deliver warheads that could crack a moon in half. "Sir," Carter said softly, "all defensive systems are online and ready." "The aliens don't seem to realize what they're actually looking at," Morrison nodded. Earth's military had learned hard lessons from centuries of warfare. The most important lesson was this: never let your enemy know your true capabilities until it was too late for them to retreat. Admiral Kethvar made his decision. These humans needed to understand their place in the galaxy, and a demonstration of superior firepower would accomplish that without unnecessary bloodshed. "Open fire," he commanded. "Minimum power. Disable their shields, but leave the ship intact." The first shot from the Zephyrian vessel streaked across space toward the USS Liberty, a bright beam of plasma energy that should have collapsed the human ship's primitive defenses instantly. Instead, the beam struck the Liberty's hull and simply vanished, absorbed and redistributed by adaptive armor systems that the aliens had never dreamed possible. "Commander." Morrison stood up from his chair and straightened his uniform. "Well," he said quietly, "I guess we're doing this the hard way."